Welcome to this very special presentation of Coffee, Tea, or Pop on Air Canada. I'm Marc Denis, your host for this outstanding edition of the program, entitled, this time around, A Canadian Rock and Roll Reunion. Over the course of the following hour, you will reacquaint with 14 of Canada's most successful and best-remembered pop groups of the early 70s, coast to coast. This show is the result of a countrywide search undertaken by yours truly over several weeks in order to track down some of the key members of our early 70s frontline bands, both English and French. Bienvenue à cette édition spéciale de l'émission Aéropop intitulée Avis de recherche d'un océan à l'autre sur les ailes d'Air Canada. Ici Marc Denis qui vous convie à une heure de musique et de conversation tout à fait unique et exceptionnelle, avec les membres clés de 14 groupes mémorables du début des années 70, autant canadiens que québécois. Donc, assurez-vous d'avoir en main votre revue de bord en route tournée à la page audio pour bien suivre les beaux dommages Harmonium, April Wine, Chilliwack, Stampeders, Guess Who, Crowbar, just to name a few of the 14 acts featured on this program. Be sure to turn to the audio pages of your En Route magazine in order not to miss your particular favorite. So without further ado, let's begin our whirlwind tour with a stop in Toronto. One of the Queen City's best remembered groups is, of course, Lighthouse, a rock orchestra type outfit founded in the late 60s by musicians Skip Prokop and Paul Hoffert. Together with singer Bob McBride and fellow musician Ralph Cole, they succeeded in bringing together rock, jazz, and classical musicians and making it all work. I caught up with co-founder Paul Hoffert in Toronto recently, and Paul admitted to me that assembling all of Lighthouse's components was not an easy task. An amplified guitar was one thing, but an amplified violin?
These string players, who of course had never played amplified instruments, and in 1968 there were no pickups or anything, so there were microphones and they were playing through guitar amplifiers. They'd pluck a string and it would go like bonk, and this note would come out, BAM! And then the string players would start turning up their amps and making them louder, and it was really quite wonderful.
And wonderful music it was indeed. From their debut concert at Toronto's Rockpile in 1969 to their unofficial last live show at the CNE Grandstand in 1974, Lighthouse thrilled audiences from coast to coast and became a popular attraction abroad as well. 9 albums and numerous hit singles later, the group members eventually went their separate ways, only to reunite again in the early 80s for a series of memorable shows. Guitarist Ralph Cole remembers the event well, but says, don't hold your breath for more.
In 1983, we did a Lighthouse reunion at Ontario Place. We did 4 shows that we rehearsed 2.5 months for. We spent a lot of time getting reacquainted and playing music together. And that worked out really nice. But I don't think, there'll probably be another thing, it's too big of a monster. That was like at any given time, Lighthouse is probably 25 people on the road. You need a business plan, and you need this, and you need that, and it's very doubtful any of that stuff would happen again.
Although another Lighthouse reunion is highly unlikely, you can still enjoy this band's greatest tracks on the CD compilation titled The Best of Lighthouse Sunny Days Again, available at better record stores everywhere. Now, before we move on to our next group on this A Canadian Rock and Roll Reunion, let's conclude the Lighthouse segment with a rock and roll anecdote, courtesy of co-founder Paul Hoffert.
Last job that I played with Lighthouse was at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, and what I really remember is I wanted to do something really special to kind of go out with a bang, and so I rigged this shirt with a whole bunch of lights on it that I could flash by pressing a button on me, and I was wearing about 120 volts of battery packs on a belt, and every time I pressed the button this thing would light up, and I figured this is really great theater. And we tested it and it worked fine, and of course we went on stage, we started playing. About halfway through the set, I pressed the button, and I always got shot to the moon because I was sweating. And of course, I was just getting those shocks like all over the place as this thing was lighting up. So my recollection of my last job was that I went out with almost a literal bang.
I'm Marc Denis, and you're listening to a Canadian rock and roll reunion. And from Toronto, we now head to Montreal to catch up with yet another memorable Canadian group of the early 70s, namely the band they used to call Mash McCann, an outfit that only scored one major hit, but it was a huge one, the infectious As the Years Go By in the summer of 1970. I caught up with the founding member of Mash McCann, Pierre Sénécal, now a producer-arranger for other bands in Montreal. Although it usually took him a week or so to write a song back then, Pierre remembers that As the Years Go By was an exception to that rule.
This one came out as a vision. Came out in about 15 minutes. I could not believe it. I just played it over and over and over. I knew I had a hit. I was sure, I was positive. This one was like a whole lifetime in 3 minutes. As far as the keyboards, well, the B3 was the big thing. Even with all the synthesizers, you cannot duplicate that big sound.
And sound was the key word for Mash McCann. Jerry Mercer, the original drummer for the band, has his own theory on why the group's sound was so unique.
Pierre Sénécal, who was the principal writer for the group, is French-Canadian. And I find that a lot of French-Canadian music, especially back then, they used to love minor keys, minor sounding changes. And I think that Mash McCann, being an English group, yet having this minor kind of flavor to a lot of the changes, made it different.
And to that tasty blend of keyboards, flute, sax, and drums, you add the fiery guitar of Rayburn Blake and the bass and smooth vocals of Brian Edwards, and the pieces of the musical puzzle were all in place. Although there were numerous personnel changes as the 70s wore on, Pierre Sénécal remained the common denominator within until the group's ultimate demise in 1974. Now, not only will they be remembered for their hit song, but for the originality of their name as well. Ever wonder what is a Mash McCann? Well, according to the bilingual Sénécal, it had something to do with the group's fondness for the island of Bermuda.
On est allé jouer aux Bermudes en 1968. Et puis, on a adoré les Bermudes. Ça a été fantastique. Et puis, nous étions un trio dans ce temps-là. Quand on est revenu à Montréal, on a ajouté un membre à l'orchestre. Et puis, au lieu de s'appeler le Triangle, il fallait trouver un autre nom.
Ah oui, Triangle.
Triangle. We loved Bermuda so much that we looked for something from Bermuda. And somebody suggested Mash McCann. And the name comes from a plant which used to be called Match Me If You Can. The reason being that not two leaves in the plant matched. And over the years, the Bermudian called it Match Me If You Can, and over the years, when they talked faster, and it became
as the
Mash
years go
McCann.
by.
As the years went by, it became Mash McCann, and that's where we got the name from.
At 65, his wife says, "Do you love me?" And it means I like to hear it again. Her husband says to her, "I love you," but it really means I love you till the end. And as the years go by, true love will never die. Now you're asking me if I love you, and it really means, will I marry you? And I answer, yes, I love you, but it really means that I won't be untrue. And as the years go by, true love will never die. I will love you forever. I will love you forever.
And as long as we're in Montreal, let's catch up with yet another fine Canadian band of the early 70s, April Wine. Originally from Halifax, this guitar-oriented quartet was led throughout by singer-songwriter-producer Miles Goodwin, who moved the operations to Montreal. Following the departure of the other three originals, Goodwin proceeded to recruit some new players in La Belle Province, most notably guitarists Gary Moffat, Brian Greenway, and Steve Lang, along with Mash McCann alumnus ace drummer Jerry Mercer, the man with the beard, the shaved head, and the thunderous strobe-light drum solos, always a highlight at an April Wine show. Jerry explained to me recently how he got the idea to add lights to an already boisterous drum solo.
I was doing a tune-up on my car and working with a strobe light, adjusting the valves, and I could see that the strobe light caused the valves to look like they were sitting still. And I had this flash I wonder if I put a strobe light on my arms and I time my arms with the strobe light, if it looked like I could be sitting still while I'm going like hell. That's basically how it started, from doing a tune-up on my car.
But everyone involved in the fickle music business will tell you that the spotlights, the hit records, and the big tours do invariably come to an end. After a remarkable 15-year run, which saw the band perennially sell out venues coast to coast in Canada as well as in the US and Europe, the group disbanded in 1984. Although the split was less than amiable and plenty of sour grapes lingered, April Wine reunion rumors have been flying lately as a project is indeed in the works. But at 40 years of age, is it still possible to come back and compete? Miles Goodwin is optimistic.
Aerosmith is a great example. They're all about 40 years old. They got caught up in the drugs and the booze and everything, and that was part of my life, I'm sorry to say. And to see them clean up and to see them come back was such a great feeling for life and reality is real encouraging, because that's exactly the course that I chose to take. In April Wine, we're very together on that. Alcohol and drug-free, a lot of veggies in the dressing room and Perrier.
Talk about putting a little water in your wine. Incidentally, April Wine's greatest hits, a box set called The Wine Collection, is currently available at better record stores as we wrap up the April Wine segment with another one of those rock and roll stories. Once again, Miles Goodwin and the perils of on-stage gimmicks.
We decided to use a cannon on stage. It was stuffed each night with gunpowder and confetti. And, of course, we had to tape the end of it and be very careful that someone didn't throw in something, like a bottle or a nail or something hard. But we used to aim this at the audience every night, and it was always a tense moment. And I would come out with this huge torch, light it up, and go over to the cannon very dramatically, lower it onto the powder end of it, and have it explode into the audience. And what happens when it works is that the whole first 15 or 20 rows are covered in burning confetti, and they're like this on their heads, trying to put it out. It's wild, and when it doesn't work, it was devastating. There was a lot of times when it didn't.
A Canadian rock and roll reunion continues now as we go from Montreal to Vancouver to remember one of the finest West Coast groups ever, Chilliwack. I caught up with ex-leader Bill Henderson in Vancouver recently. Bill recalled how the group evolved from an outfit called the Collectors into Chilliwack and why they settled on that particular name.
We were playing some things that had a kind of an Indian sound to them, I suppose you could say, because they featured drums a lot and then tom-toms. We would do chants over them and things. And we felt that an Indian word would be good. Chilliwack means Valley of Many Streams, and we felt we had many influences in our music, so that's why we chose it.
And although they first gained prominence in the early 70s with their unique blend of acoustic and electric rhythms, it wasn't until the 80s that they really hit their stride with a shift to more pop-oriented songs, such as Don't Stop, What You Gonna Do, and My Girl. These days, Bill Henderson is a proud rock and roll dad, witnessing his daughter Camille's musical success as a member of the pop trio, the West End Girls. Bill is also involved as director of a musical association in BC and has joined fellow artists Sherry Ulrich and Roy Forbes in an acoustical trio called UHF. And when he's not on his sailboat poking around the coves on the coast, you'll find him at his home in Vancouver.
I've been writing music for movies and TV. There was one song which UHF recorded, but it was also was first recorded for a movie. The movie's called Bye Bye Blues, which I know you have played on your in-flight programs. The song in it that I wrote is called When I Sing. It won a Genie Award for Best Original Song in a Canadian Movie in 1990.
Obviously quite content with his life since the breakup of the group, Bill Henderson still has fond memories of his many years as leader of Chilliwack. The good times with fellow band member, the late Brian McLeod, and all the other alumni. And the bittersweet memories, which are part of the picture as well.
The last Chilliwack concert was in December of 1987, and it was in Nicosia, Cyprus. And we were playing for Canadian troops there. It was part of a Mideast tour that we did. We played in Israel, Egypt, and Cyprus. I didn't know at the time that it was the last show, but the way things evolved, it just became clear that it was finally over. It was 18 years with that group, and in a sense that was a fitting place because it was kind of a jumping off point for me for a whole new kind of look at my life. Being in the Middle East was an amazing experience.
From Vancouver, we now head to Ottawa as a Canadian rock and roll reunion catches up with the five-man electrical band. Known originally as the Staccatos in the 60s, the five-man electrical band was led throughout by singer-songwriter Les Emerson. I talked with Les about the nation's capital's particular musical orientation and flavor.
Ottawa is not a big city. It's like a bunch of small towns mashed together. We all knew each other. We're all friends. We're all in the same kind of boat. And consequently, there was an Ottawa sound. Ottawa was a pop town, a lot of good vocal groups, very vocally oriented bands here. And our hometown was very, very kind to us, too. The two stations in town that were playing the pop music were very good to us.
And the public has been very good to the five-man electrical band. Following a successful and enjoyable 1986 reunion, the five originals have decided to reunite on a regular basis and to perform when and where it seems right, usually around the Ottawa and Toronto areas. Unlike the 70s, though, no one is about to give up the day job this time around.
It's even more of a thrill to see the crowd's reaction to some of the old tunes. We get people in their 40s right down to some very young kids, and there's absolutely no pressure to get up there and be the hottest pop band of your era or anything. Just everybody's there to have fun, and that's what it is.
A good time band indeed. Who could forget songs like I'm a Stranger Here, Werewolf, You're Absolutely Right, and the clever lyrics of their big international hit, Signs, coming in the summer of 1971. That was to be the break that would allow the Ottawa band to enjoy success in the U.S. as well as at home, albeit for a brief period of time. Nonetheless, there are no regrets, and still today, lots of fun stories to share. Let's conclude the five-man electrical band segment of our reunion program with one of Les Emerson's favorite stories about a certain gig that has never been forgotten.
We spent about 10 or 11 hours flying, driving to get to this job. It was on the Black Hills of Dakota, exactly where Custer's Last Stand had been. I mean, this should have been a clue, you know. It was a big outdoor festival. We got there, and there were thousands and thousands of people. So our road manager very cleverly went and got paid. We go on to play. We're in the introduction to the second song. After driving all this way, this incredible storm comes up. This wind, black clouds, thunder, lightning, and all the people are still, nobody's leaving, but the wind takes the roof off the stage. I hear the drum stop, all the cymbals blew away. This thunder, oh yeah, you wouldn't believe it. All of a sudden, we're all standing there. I mean, it's dangerous on stage when it starts to rain. So we got back in the car, and we left. Like, we drove for 11, 12 hours to play like 4 minutes. You know, take the money and run. That's what we call that tour.
Sign said, everybody welcome, come in, kneel down and pray. But when they passed around the plate at the end of it all, I didn't have a penny to pay. So I got me a pen and a paper, and I made up my own little sign. I said, thank you, Lord, for thinking about me. I'm alive and doing fine. Woo! Sign, sign, everywhere a sign. Looking at the scenery, breaking my mind. Do this, don't do that. Can't you read the sign? Sign, sign, everywhere a sign.
You're listening to a Canadian rock and roll reunion. I'm Marc Denis, remembering another big-time homegrown band of the early 70s, the Stampeders. This six-man Calgary-based band trimmed its roster down to 3 players in the early 70s and moved out east, seeking fame and fortune. They find it. I caught up with the principal writer of the group, guitarist Rich Dodson, now a successful record producer in Toronto. I asked Rich to name the 2 most important people responsible for the Stampeders' success. The answer didn't take long to come.
Well, Mel Shaw was very important. He got me to make that critical decision to leave Calgary, hop in the old caddy limousine with the rented U-Haul trailer and head out east, playing for dinner, basically. Donald K. Donald, lots of fun. Boy, Donald was great at putting these tours together and pulling them off and making them work, and very supportive. In fact, I'm going to be working with Donald again. One of my acts, Debbie Johnson, signed with their label, Aquarius.
Equally at ease with country, pop, and heavy rock, the Stampeders went on to become the top concert draw in Canada between 1972 and 1976, performing over 1,000 concerts. Along with Dodson, the trio included drummer Kim Burley, today an actor, and bassist and resident clown Ronnie King, today a prominent Calgary musician and businessman. Ironically, by 1976, though, the band had swelled from the best-remembered 3-man unit to an 8-man band, and it's about that time that Rich Dodson decided the writing was on the wall.
For me, I just felt like I was a guitar player in a big band. It wasn't the same as the 3. I just didn't feel it was going anywhere, and you know, when you're in the same hotel room in Bathurst, you say, room 604. I was here on the last tour in the same room. Time to move on.
And so is life. Mind you, there are always some great memories that can come out of an international career, however short-lived it may be. As we wrap up the Stampeders, let's listen to Rich Dodson's fond recollection of one of the group's better moments under the spotlights, a memorable outdoor concert in Brazil.
Yeah, this Brazil thing was incredible. There was 30,000 screaming fanatic kids. We were representing Canada. It was a song festival. The Scottish band just came off, and we said, what's it like? Not too bad. Just play loud. Okay, just play loud, guys. So how many kids are out there? There's 30,000 out there, but I hate to tell you, it's televised. No, where? All over South America. 90 million viewers. Huh?
Sweet, sweet city woman. Oh, she's my sweet, 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 sweet city woman. Sweet, sweet city woman. Oh, my sweet, 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 sweet city woman. Everybody's sweet, 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 sweet city woman. Sweet, 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 sweet city woman. Sweet, 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 sweet city woman. Sweet, sweet.
Moving back east now on this a Canadian rock and roll reunion to remember a group called The Bells. Do the songs Fly a Little White Dove Fly, Moody Manitoba Morning, and Stay a While ring a bell? Of course they do. Led by Cliff Edwards, brother of Mash McCann's Brian Edwards, the Bells hit the big time in the early 70s after playing what seemed like every hotel lounge in the country. I caught up with Cliff, now an advertising executive, living in Gananoque, Ontario. He confessed that there is nothing like the power of a hit record.
We were all from Montreal, and one of the biggest thrills we had
was to go back to Montreal after we had had Fly Little White to Fly and Stay a While, and to play at Place des Arts in our hometown. We had sold out that beautiful center, and suddenly there was magic in the air, and we knew the night was going to be a special one for us because our own people were coming to applaud us.
Jackie Ralph was the Bells' prominent female vocalist. I caught up with the half-British, half-South African former Montrealer in Vancouver, the city she now calls home. Although she's been battling a serious illness for a couple of years now, she has responded well to treatment, is feeling better, and readily accepted to be part of this reunion. We chatted about yesterday and today. Has Canadian music gained any ground since the Bells were on top? Jackie Ralph.
We are just a powerhouse now. I mean, you look at Katie Lang and Northern Pikes, Cowboy Junkies, Celine Dion, just incredible talent. And it sort of makes you sad that it had to be forced when we were in the business, you know. You had to be forced to play our music as Canadian content, and it's a shame that it had to be done that way. But now, I don't think we have to be forced. We have so much talent out there.
Her one-time singing partner, Cliff Edwards, shares similar thoughts.
I think Canadian music is very healthy. We're finally over that Canadian kind of problem. We always looked as though we were an American copy, and I think we've reached beyond that, and we have great artists who are doing well internationally, and I think we're in great shape.
And in great shape as well is the Bells' musical legacy in the form of a CD compilation appropriately titled Best of the Bells, and available at a major record store near you. Now, in order to conclude this segment of our reunion, I've called upon the recently first-time married Jackie Ralph to send us off with a funny story or anecdote from the Bells' career. Listen up.
We were working at the Copacabana in New York City, and this was a big date for us. It was very important. The stage was tiny, and we were 5 people crammed onto that stage, and dear old Dougie, our drummer, who was very animated, he was a show in himself. He twirled his sticks. I mean, he was wonderful. You just loved Dougie. We were heavily into this song. The crowd was loving us. They were laughing, they were singing, they were clapping. Suddenly we hear crash, and didn't know what had happened. We looked back, no Dougie. He'd fallen off the back of the stage into the palm trees. The Copacabana lounge, Dougie's in the palm trees. It was a riot.
How it makes me quiver. How it makes me smile. With all this love I have to give you, guess I'm gonna stay with you a while. How it makes me quiver. How it makes me smile. With all this love I have to give you, guess I'm gonna stay with you a while. Stay with you.
I guess I'm gonna stay.
Please do, by all means. If you're just joining in, you're listening to a Canadian rock and roll reunion, a get-together of 14 of the country's best-remembered groups of the early 70s. I'm Marc Denis, moving on to Toronto to get the latest on the group they used to call Edward Bear. They hit pop music's major leagues in the summer of 1972 with a mega hit, a tune called The Last Song. I caught up lately with the leader of the trio, Larry Evoy, on his farm in Scarborough, Ontario, where he and his wife breed and raise horses now. Even though his group success happened many moons ago, Larry recalled fondly how he and fellow bandmates Danny Marks and Paul Weldon came to choose the bizarre name of Edward Bear for the group.
The name Edward Bear came from a Winnie the Pooh book that a friend of mine had given me, and the very first page it said, "Here comes Edward Bear bumping down the stairs." And Edward Bear looked like a great name.
And it worked. The first album in 1969 yielded their debut Canadian hit, You, Me, and Mexico, and the Bear was off and running. But it wasn't until 1972 when an influential Windsor, Ontario radio station picked up the group's 4th single that the floodgates to the U.S. opened wide for Edward Bear. This tune, called The Last Song, suddenly raced up to number 3 in America and number 1 in Canada. Unfortunately, the Toronto trio was not able to convince radio programmers that there could indeed be a follow-up single to A Last Song. After a few more releases in Canada, Larry Evoy finally dissolved what was left of the group in 1975. But wait! Like all the groups featured on this special, isn't Edward Bear supposed to have a reunion rumor flying in the 90s?
Danny and Paul and I have talked about recording together, and it just hasn't happened. It's one of those things where we were going to start shipping tapes back and forth by mail. That shows you how often we can get together. It hasn't happened. I think if we did a reunion, it would be on record. If we could ever get together at the same place, same time, agree on a song and record it, that's probably what would happen.
Who knows? Until then, collectors will want to pick up the Greatest Hits CD, a compilation called The Edward Bear Collection, with all the goodies included. And speaking of goodies, and concluding the Edward Bear portion of the show, here's a great story on the classic nightmare for any rock group, the mismatched concert. Once again, Larry Evoy.
Probably the best mismatched concert we ever played was in Atlanta, Georgia. We were on the same bill with Billy Preston. Billy Preston, if you remember, had a big hit called Nothing From Nothing Leaves Nothing. Very funky song. He had a very funky band, and we had just had the hit last song, which is not a funky song. We were not a funky band. So we got on stage and looked out at a sea of faces that looked like they were looking for a funky band, and we weren't it. Fortunately, it worked out. We did a short set, 20 minutes, and kind of chose the material very carefully, and got on and got off, and then Billy Preston showed up in his white limousine and his funky band, and they hammered out their tunes, and we didn't get lynched, got on our bus and left town.
It's the last song I'll ever write for you. It's the last time that I'll tell you just how much I really care. This is the last song I'll ever sing for you. You come looking for the light, and it won't be there, but I love you. Oh, yes, I do. It's the last song I'll ever write for you. It's the last song I'll ever write for you. It's the last song I'll ever write for you.
A Canadian rock and roll reunion now moves on to Vancouver in order to remember a group called the Poppy Family, which you may recall was fronted by then husband and wife team Susan and Terry Jacks. One of the first Canadian outfits to be embraced by the CanCon radio rulings, the Poppy Family scored big stateside as well. Following the band and consequent marriage breakups, Terry Jacks went on to score several hit singles on his own, most notably the multi-million-selling Seasons in the Sun in 1974, still today one of Canada's top sellers ever. Today, Terry is remarried and divides his time between his ranch near Whistler, BC, and his boat and oceanfront home north of Vancouver. In a rare interview, Terry, now an environmentalist, voiced his concerns about Mother Nature's sad state of affairs.
I love the British Columbia coast. To me, that's the most beautiful place in the world, and that's what I've been doing. I've been trying to protect it from these pulp mills that are pumping poisons into the waters. And you see, technology avails now where we can make paper without using chlorine compounds. And we're getting regulations by this government that are coming in that are going to make these mills change. And it's about time. You know, the environment can't wait.
And although he pretty much abandoned the music business in the mid-70s, Terry still has some pretty good stories to tell from his years in the Poppy Family and as a solo artist.
I remember when I was in Germany, they wanted me to sing Seasons in the Sun in German. And I said, I can't speak German, but my girlfriend, who is now my wife, she was German, and she says, well, look, I'll help you. You can do it sort of phonetically. And I says, look, the only way I'm going to do it is if you supply all the champagne and all the German sausages, and I'll stand in front of that mic until I do it. And I tell you, I was in front of that mic for about 8 hours, and I'll never forget the song in German. I don't know what the heck I said, but it went like, in den Gärten der Zeit blühte Wein der Fröhlichkeit, Leberin lebt ein, wenn ich nicht mehr bei dir bin, whatever that means.
Sounds delicious. I'll have two, please. Now, as we conclude the Poppy Family segment, let's get some news on your ex-wife, Susan. Apparently, she is now remarried as well and living in the U.S., correct?
Right. Susan's living in Nashville now. I talk to her every couple of years. she started writing songs. She'd never written songs before, and I think she's trying to do some recording or doing some commercials or something like that. She was such a good singer, and I never, considered myself a singer. I was always a writer and a producer.
Which way you going, Billy? Or need I ask? 'Cause you don't want me, Billy. You're free at last. I won't forget you, Billy, for all my life. I'll always love you, Billy. I'll stay your wife. You are my only, my heart and my soul, babe. I have nothing to show, babe. If you should go away, you are my only, my heart and my soul, babe. I have nothing to show, babe. If you should go, you are my only, my heart and my soul, babe.
Vous écoutez présentement l'avis de recherche d'un océan à l'autre. Ici Marc Denis, en quête de retrouvailles avec 14 des principaux groupes canadiens et québécois du début des années 70. Cette émission spéciale serait sans doute loin d'être complète sans la présence de Beau Dommage. Quel bon souvenir! J'ai rencontré Michel Rivard récemment et ce dernier m'a parlé volontiers de son époque au sein du groupe. Nous en avons convenu que de toutes les merveilleuses chansons de la formation, c'est toujours le fameux blues de la métropole qui définit le mieux tout ce que représentait Beau Dommage.
Je pense que c'est une chanson qui représente vraiment bien notre génération, c'est-à-dire les gens qui ont vécu, qui sont nés avec les Beatles, qui ont vécu l'Expo 67 au premier plan, là, qui se tenait au pavillon de la jeunesse puis qui allaient voir les shows à la Place des Nations. Et qui, à un moment donné, se sont rendus compte que les gangs de chums, les tripes d'adolescents, tout ça, c'est quelque chose qui peut pas durer toujours.
Par contre, en jasant avec Marie-Michel Desrosiers, la fille du groupe, on en vient à réaliser que l'amitié entre cette gang de chums qui s'appelait Beau Dommage semble, elle, vouloir durer toujours. Qui ne se souvient pas des fameux spectacles d'adieu au Forum de Montréal en 1984?
Nous autres, on se réunit souvent. On est encore des amis, on va aux vues, on va manger, on s'aide sur chaque album. Il y a toujours quelqu'un qui vient aider quelqu'un d'autre à faire une voix, une musique, même un conseil, tu sais. Moi, je suis même la marraine de la petite fille de Réal Desrosiers, tu sais. Ça... Ah oui, certainement. Et on s'aime encore beaucoup.
Et moi, vous savez que j'aime beaucoup conclure les séquences de chaque groupe invité par une anecdote humoristique. L'honneur appartient cette fois à un autre des anciens membres de Beau Dommage, Pierre Bertrand. Pierre m'a raconté une anecdote savoureuse concernant le premier succès sur disque de la formation, c'est-à-dire la chanson « Tous les palmiers ».
Les palmiers, c'est ce qui est drôle, c'est qu'au moment de la chanson où ça dit vous pouvez m'appeler ici, 6760 Saint-Vallier, Montréal ». Mais ça, c'est une adresse qui existe. Puis Robert Léger, qui a composé la chanson, les paroles et la musique, il restait là, puis il restait vraiment là, mais il était loin de se douter que cette chanson-là deviendrait un succès phénoménal. Là, il a reçu plein de lettres, puis de télégrammes, puis de cassettes, démos, de toutes sortes de monde. Ça a été... en tout cas, il a déménagé à un moment donné.
Tous les palmiers, tous les bananiers vont pousser pareil quand je serai parti. Vous pourrez m'écrire ici 77 60 Saint-Vallier, Montréal. 77 60 Saint-Vallier, Montréal. 77 60.
Est-ce qu'il y a une famille au Québec qui n'a pas une copie de ce premier album de Beau Dommage? Et dans un même temps, y a-t-il une famille au Québec qui n'a pas au moins un disque d'harmonium? On se souviendra que ces deux formations se partageaient la faveur du public à peu près d'égale façon au début des années 70. Récemment, je rencontrais l'ex-leader d'harmonium, Serge Fiori, aujourd'hui producteur de disques et de musique pour long métrage. Et lors de cette trop rare entrevue, Je demandais à Serge la question piège. Y avait-il une compétition entre les deux groupes à cette époque?
On avait le même degré de popularité dans un marché qui est petit. Il y avait la gang de tripeux qui suivait Harmonium, puis il y avait le monde urbain qui suivait Beau Dommage. J'ai toujours admiré la façon qu'on s'est côtoyés. Mais je suis sûr qu'en quelque part, dans l'arrière de nos têtes, à un moment donné, on avait une compétition. Oui.
Et si le blues de la métropole représentait bien Beau Dommage, il en était de même pour l'heptade dans le cas d'Harmonium. À nouveau, Serge Fiori.
L'heptade, ça a été le projet, je pense, le plus complet, le plus représentatif vraiment de tout ce qu'Harmonium est. Un album double sur les 7 niveaux de conscience. Je ne l'ai jamais réentendu, sauf quand je suis allé faire le mastering digital pour la sortie des compact disques. Mais de l'écouter complètement objectivement, 15 ans plus tard, j'étais très, très ému. Je pensais pas que ça tiendrait le temps comme ça.
Et ce temps ne peut effacer le merveilleux souvenir que nous conservons de cette grosse machine musicale qu'était Harmonium, depuis leur tout premier hit Pour un instant en 1972 jusqu'à leur tout dernier spectacle au Centre de la nature de Laval en 1981. À travers tout ça, Serge Fiori se rappelle de plusieurs bons moments, dont un en particulier qu'il va partager avec nous. Imaginez que nous nous retrouvons à la Place des Arts, milieu des années 70, pour la première d'Harmonium. Tout le monde a le trac, tout le monde, sauf le claviériste du groupe Serge Loca, qui, tout en étant un brillant musicien, est un type de nonchalance déconcertante. Serge Fiori nous relate le reste.
Je me suis rendu à l'arrière-scène à tout à l'heure faire le test de son et j'ai vu tout son équipement en mille miettes, en morceaux à terre. Et lui en train d'essayer de réparer son filage. Et là, bon, il est 5 heures, on fait un test de son. Je dis, bon, il reste encore 3 heures. Eh bien non, à 8h20, 10 minutes avant le lever du rideau, il est encore là. Il est assis à terre, mais on est à Place des Arts, on n'a pas le choix. Le rideau se lève, je parle de la première chanson, et en plein milieu de la première chanson, il est supposé d'arriver avec son passage. Et tout ce qu'on a vu, c'est une main absolument extraordinaire arriver du bas sur le clavier, comme ça dans les airs, et jouer de A à Z. Et de la main gauche, il réparait le système de pédales qu'il y avait à terre. Il m'a même pas regardé, il nous a pas souri, il a pas dit un mot. Ça a toujours été comme ça, tout le temps.
Pour un instant, j'ai oublié mon nom. Ça m'a permis enfin d'écrire cette chanson.
Well, there you have it. Two of the most prominent French-speaking Quebec bands of the early 70s, namely Beau Dommage and Harmonium, on our coast-to-coast special, A Canadian Rock and Roll Reunion. I'm Marc Denis, heading to the Toronto-Hamilton area now to remember Crowbar. This no-nonsense six-man band made every concert an event at the turn of the 70s, whether at Massey Hall in Toronto or right across the country during their many Trans-Canada expeditions. Led throughout by their burly 6'4" outspoken main man, Kelly J., the band never failed to please. I caught up with Kelly, now living in Alberta, and despite never breaking ground in the U.S., he's quite proud of what was accomplished through Crowbar at home.
I guess the proudest achievement that we ever had the whole time that we were together was meeting John Lennon, meeting Pierre Trudeau. I feel good that I helped break ground for Colin James, Bryan Adams, those people. Of course, they made it on their own merit, but it was wonderful to kick a few doors open that were jammed at the time. Pierre Junot helped a lot. He opened a lot of doors for us.
And nowadays, the door is wide open for Crowbar get-togethers as Kelly J still keeps the spirit alive at the drop of a hat with any one of the close to 40 musicians involved in the band over the years. Whether it's with his old pal, the King Biscuit Boy, or any one of the originals, where there's a party, there's a Crowbar. Quite content, as he says, living in the center of the free world, Kelly didn't miss the chance to talk to me about his many toys.
I just love Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and my favorite car of all cars is my 1958 Cadillac Fleetwood 60 Series. That's right. 4-door, no power windows, no power seats. I love that car. It's pink with a white top. It's a Fisher auto body. And moving out west is the smartest thing I ever did. Living in Canmore, Alberta is probably the closest I'll be to heaven on earth.
Now tell me, is there any doubt he is not a happy camper? And is there any doubt that this man cannot tell a good story? Wrapping up this segment of a Canadian rock and roll reunion, once again, Kelly J on how Crowbar got its name.
Crowbar was playing in Winnipeg at the Town and Country Dining Room, I guess, backing up people like Al Hibbler and Tommy Edwards, and then basically came back to Toronto and started backing up Ronnie Hawkins. We played the Fillmore East with Ronnie, and then sort of decided that we wanted to break out on our own, and the name Crowbar, at that time we were the band right after the Hawks. And so Ronnie said one day to a columnist in Toronto that we were a nice bunch of guys, but we were so stupid we could screw up a crowbar in 10 seconds. And we thought, geez, that sounds like a great name. Screw Up.
What a feeling, what a rush, what a show. Whoa, Kelly, you're back?
Marc Denis, ladies and gentlemen. Take a bow, Mark. Oh, look at this guy. Thanks very much for all your interest in it. Hey, enjoy your flight.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kelly J from Screw Up. And what a flight it is as we head to Vancouver once again to catch up this time with Randy Bachman as we chat and get the latest on Bachman Turner Overdrive. This Vancouver-based band got its start in Winnipeg following Bachman's hasty exit from the Guess Who at the peak of their success in 1970. Actually, Randy Bachman holds the honor still today of being the only Canadian singer-songwriter to have reached #1 on the Billboard hit charts as a member of 2 different Canadian groups. I asked Randy recently to put all of this in perspective.
The odds were against us in making it, so it was 10 long years of struggling to make it to #1 with American Woman. And when I left the Guess Who and started BTO, it was very similar, and it was a very difficult time starting over again. So it was a matter of going out and playing everywhere to let everyone see us and know that we were alive, and it seemed to work because a few years later we were #1 with album Not Fragile and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet single. It was not easy at all.
And although it is never easy to make a comeback, BTO has reunited again and found a new lease on life thanks to the release of the group's greatest hits on CD and to the advent of the popular oldies rock radio format. Consequently, Randy, his brother Robbie, and guitarists Fred Turner and Blair Thornton can coordinate tours around the proverbial day jobs. And just what are those proverbial day jobs? Randy Bachman.
I am always in my recording studio writing songs for other bands and other artists and sending them out. Robbie is involved in a couple of businesses, and Fred Turner is involved in his own record label, Thunder Records, and Blair Thornton is an avid and terrific golfer and could actually be a professional golfer if he chose to.
A devout Mormon and father of 8 children. Whew, that's taking care of business. Randy is quite pleased with his contribution to the Canadian music industry and now wishes similar success for one of his sons, currently a guitarist for an up-and-coming band called Circle C. Best of luck, baby. And to wrap up this BTO portion of the Canadian rock and roll reunion, let's hear one of Randy Bachman's favorite stories about once upon a time on the road in the early 70s. Randy?
We'd happened to be in one place. I think we sold out 3 or 4 days in a row. So we were in this one hotel, I think, for 4 nights, and you get used to your hotel room. My brother Rob, who's our drummer in BTO, can't sleep if there's a crack of light in the room. So he would go into a room and close the drapes and curtains and have a big roll of duct tape and duct tape the curtains and the walls. So his room was totally pitch black. And I'd hear Robbie turn off his TV, and I now know his room is in darkness, and he's walking to the bathroom, and I can hear the toilet flush and stuff, and I can tell he's come out of the bathroom in the dark, run around the corner in his room, and dived headfirst onto his bed. And this happens 3 or 4 nights in a row. After we'd stayed in this place, we went to a new hotel. Same thing, we finished our gig, went back to our hotel, watched whatever was on TV till the final sign-off, and then I hear the normal click, and the toilet flushes, and I hear footsteps, and then suddenly there is an enormous crash and a scream and moaning. And what had happened was we were in a different room from the last 3 or 4 nights, and he had come out of the bathroom with the lights out, went around the corner, and dove headfirst into an open closet.
And last, but certainly not least, our final stop on the reunion schedule takes us to Winnipeg, Manitoba, to salute the Guess Who, a group that was not only the leader of the Canadian music industry at one time, it was the Canadian music industry. From Shakin' All Over to American Woman and beyond, the Guess Who cleared a path and created a platform for which every successful Canadian group since is to be grateful for. Although many faces came and went through the years, the Guess Who's best remembered and most successful roster is the reunion of 1983 lineup consisting of drummer Gary Peterson, bassist Jim Cale, guitarist Randy Bachman, and of course, pianist lead singer Burton Cummings. During our recent conversation, Burton, now in his 40s, shared some thoughts on yesterday and today.
I didn't get much of a good night's sleep till after I turned 30, but I really and truly feel better now. I think if you don't sit back and take stock when you turn 40, that you're really missing the milestone of it all. You know, we put into practice in later years what we've learned in the earlier years.
And despite a hot and cold relationship between Bachman and Cummings that dates back to those earlier years, there is no denying by either party that what they created together in the Guess Who was pure magic. Once again, Randy Bachman.
When Burton Cummings and I wrote songs, there wasn't one person always doing the same job. We transcended jobs and mixed and matched just to get a good song. And I'm very proud of the things that Burton and I wrote together. There's some great, great music there.
And the brilliance of it all was that just like the young Canadian music industry of the time, they were merely teenage songwriters feeling their way through a spectrum of emotions they had yet to experience themselves. Burton Cummings.
You know, as kids, Randy and I wrote more hypothetically. These Eyes and Laughing, those songs were just made up. When it got to be Stand Tall, I'm Scared, Timeless Love, those songs were based far more in reality.
And as the reality of being 40-ish settles in for Burton Cummings, he has resumed writing, recording, and touring in the 90s, solo or with others, even joining former Beatle Ringo Starr's all-star band recently. Well, time to wrap up the Guess Who feature and the program itself. I'm Marc Denis, and in order to conclude, I thought I'd put Burton Cummings to task by having him paint a picture of Canada coast to coast without any prior warning and at lightning speed. You be the judge on how he does. All right, here we go, Bert, starting with
Vancouver. Vancouver, the pretty city. It's one of the only places in the world where the mountains come right down to the ocean. From the air, coming into Vancouver is truly a pleasure.
Edmonton.
Edmonton, very cold in the winter, and also a tremendous hockey town. Also Edmonton in the middle of summer. It doesn't get dark till about midnight, so it's really nice in the summer.
Calgary.
Calgary, well, the Stampede, of course. When I was a kid, Calgary, it seems to me that the football team had a dynasty. Another very pretty place to fly into.
Regina.
Regina is a special place to me because in '66, when I first joined the Guess Who, we stayed the whole summer there. And that's where they train the Mounties.
Running back to
Saskatoon. Yeah, that's a good place. That's a kind of a boom town these days in the 90s. It seems like it's really growing fast. There's a lot of young people there. It was the inspiration for that song, you know, Running Back to Saskatoon.
Winnipeg.
Hometown. You can smell the thunderstorms coming in the summer. It's flat. The prairies go forever. The flat wheat fields, you know, it's really gorgeous flying in. You can see forever.
Toronto.
When you fly into Toronto, it seems like you're over it for 20 minutes before you land. I mean, the lights go on forever at night. Quite an international, world-class tourist place, you know, with the Blue Jays and the new Sky Dome and the tower. If it's clear enough, you can actually see Niagara Falls, they tell me, from the tower.
Ottawa.
I've had some great gigs there.
Quebec City.
I suppose the most historically magic city.
Montreal.
I collect hockey cards, and the Canadians are the ones that everyone goes after. I mean, there's a lot of spirit, a lot of soul in Montreal. The last time I ever played with the Guess Who was at the Montreal Forum.
Let's end it with the Maritimes.
Met people from 30, 40 different countries in Halifax because it's such a port. It's such an international port. And Charlottetown, too. I've been to Prince Edward Island only once, but we were treated like kings, and the mud really is red.
New Brunswick and Newfoundland.
Been there many times. St. John's, Newfoundland, St. John, New Brunswick. There's no pretense there. They're very, very unpretentious people, just really nice folks to be with.
American woman said get away. American woman, listen what I say. Look, I'm hanging around my door. Don't wanna see your face no more. I don't need your war machines. I don't need your ghetto scenes. Colored lights can hypnotize. Sparkle someone else's eyes. Now, woman, get away from me. American woman, mama, let me be. No, gotta get away now. Go, go, go. I'm gonna leave you, woman. Gonna leave you, woman. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You're no good for me. I'm no good for you. Gonna look you right in the eye. Tell you what I'm gonna do. You know I'm gonna leave. You know I'm gonna go. You know I'm gonna leave. You know I'm gonna go. American woman, gonna mess your mind. American woman, she gonna mess your mind. American woman, gonna mess your mind. American woman, gonna mess your mind. Say A, say M, say E, say R, say I, C, say A, M. American woman, gonna mess your mind. American woman, gonna mess your mind. American woman, gonna mess your mind.
Good work, Burton Cummings. And from coast to coast to coast, you've been listening to a Canadian rock and roll reunion. I'd like to thank the fine musicians from the 14 groups heard in this program for their time, cooperation, and genuine enthusiasm, and for helping make this 14 Karat Gold special a truly memorable presentation. En conclusion, j'aimerais remercier tous les musiciens qui ont prêté leur temps et accordé leur précieuse collaboration à cet avis de recherche d'un océan à l'autre. Cette émission a été conçue par les productions Marc Denis. Tout droit réservé. Si vous aimeriez réécouter l'émission, gardez cette antenne Air Canada, le programme vous reviendra bientôt. A Canadian rock and roll reunion was created by Marc Denis Productions. All rights reserved. If you'd like to listen again, please stay tuned to this Air Canada channel. The program will return shortly. Bon voyage!